Before Egypt, before Sumer, before Greece, before any civilization we have a name for, someone was already here. And every culture on Earth, separated by thousands of miles, thousands of years, with no contact, no shared language, no common writing, they all remembered them. 7 of them, always 7, and they all left with a warning. Let's start where the oldest written record does. Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, and a civilization that was already ancient when the Romans were building roads. The Sumerians wrote down something they clearly believed for much longer than writing had existed. A list. Specifically, a list of 7 beings they called the Apkallu. The word means sage, but these were not ordinary sages. Before we go further, you need to know who Enki is. Enki is the Sumerian god of wisdom, of water, of creation. He's the one who designed the Apkallu, the one who sent them, the one who decided what humanity would receive and what it wouldn't. He is simultaneously humanity's greatest benefactor and its most complicated guardian. Keep that in mind. We know their names from a primary Mesopotamian text called the Mēseri, the Protected House, a ritual incantation that listed all 7 by name and function, written in the 1st millennium BCE, but describing something far older. Uana, who completed the plans of heaven and earth. Uana-Duga, who is given broad understanding. And Meduga, to whom a good fate is decreed. And Megalama, who was born in a house. And Mebuluga, who grew up on a river flat. And Enlilda, the purification priest of Eridu. Utuwabzu, who ascended to heaven. 7 names, 7 functions, each one assigned to a specific antediluvian king. The kings who ruled before the flood, whose reigns the Sumerian king list records in numbers that strain the imagination. Hundreds of thousands of years before the catastrophe. The first of them, Uana, or Oannes, as the Greeks later called him, is described in extraordinary detail by the Babylonian priest Berossus, writing around 291 BCE. He recorded something that was already ancient to him. Oannes emerged from the Persian Gulf, part man, part fish, and he gave humanity everything. How to read and write, mathematics, how to build cities and found temples, how to make laws and divide land, how to plant seeds and harvest crops. According to Berossus, from that time, nothing further has been discovered. Everything humanity needed, delivered in one arrival. And then, this is the detail most researchers gloss over. The knowledge was buried. Literally, before the flood came, the Apkallu put everything they had taught down in writing and buried it in the city of Sippar. They knew what was coming, and they made sure the knowledge would survive it. The 7th name, Utuwabzu, who ascended to heaven, hold on to that. Because the Sumerian king list assigns 1 sage to each king, 1 to 1. And the 7th king on that list is Enmeteronki, king of Sippar, the city where the knowledge would later be buried before the flood. Enmeteronki was said to have been taken into the divine assembly, shown the heavenly tablets, given access to the secrets of heaven and earth. Now go to the Hebrew Bible, Genesis, chapter 5. Count the patriarchs from Adam. The 7th is Enoch, who walked with God and was not, for God took him. The seventh Sumerian king, taken to heaven, the seventh sage assigned to him, ascended to heaven, and the seventh Hebrew patriarch, taken by God without dying. That's not a coincidence across two traditions. That's a memory. And the scholar Borger, one of the foremost Assyriologists of the 20th century, he said it directly. The mythological conception of Enoch's ascension to heaven derives from Enmeteronki's counselor, the seventh antediluvian sage, named Utuwabzu. Someone carried that memory from Mesopotamia to the Hebrew Bible and preserved it, even while rewriting everything around it. Why keep that detail? Of everything that could have been changed, why keep the seventh? The poem of Erra, a Babylonian text from the 9th century BCE, tells us where the others went. Marduk speaks directly about the Apkallu. I made those Umamu go down to the Apsu, and I said they were not to come back. Not away, down, into the subterranean waters, the domain of Enki, the deep place below the earth, and they were told not to come back up. Now we leave Mesopotamia and travel east to a tradition that developed independently in a completely different language with a completely different cosmology, and find exactly the same seven. In Hindu tradition, they are the Saptarishi. Sapta, seven, Rishi, sage. The Vedas, among the oldest religious texts on earth, treat them not as mythological figures, but as cosmic ones, beings of extraordinary wisdom who predate recorded civilization, and who served as the patriarchs of Vedic knowledge itself. They're described as having been present at the very founding of the world, not as gods, as teachers, as advisors, keepers of knowledge that came from somewhere beyond what any human mind could generate alone. And they are astronomically mapped, not metaphorically, literally. In Hindu astronomy, each of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, Ursa Major, carries the name of one of the 7 sages. The constellation itself is called the Saptarishi Mandala. Look up at the northern sky on a clear night, and you're looking directly at the 7 sages of the Vedic tradition. And the Hindu tradition doesn't just give us 7 cosmic sages mapped to the stars. It gives us the flood narrative itself, and at the center of it, a fish. The Matsya avatar, the first incarnation of Vishnu. Here is what the Shatapatha Brahmana records, one of the oldest Vedic texts we have. A tiny fish appeared to the sage Manu, asked him to protect it. He carried it in a jar. It grew. He moved it to a larger vessel. It grew again. He moved it to the ocean, and there it revealed itself. This was no ordinary fish. This was the divine. And it told Manu, a great flood is coming. Build a boat, load it with the 7 sages, carry the seeds of all living things, and when the waters rise, I'll guide you. The flood came. Manu tied his boat to the horn of the fish and was guided through the destruction with the 7 sages aboard to the highest mountain, where civilization would begin again. Fish, a warning, 7 sages, a boat, a flood, a new beginning. The fish being at the center of the Hindu flood story is carrying the same structural memory as Oannes, rising from the Persian Gulf in Mesopotamia, as the Viracocha rising from Lake Titicaca in Peru. The same figure, the same water, a different ocean. And here is one more thing about the Saptarishi and the stars. In the Mahabharata, one of the oldest epic texts on Earth, there is a story. The 7 sages were once paired with the 7 stars of the Pleiades, the Kritika, their wives, and they left them, ascended to become the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, where Hindu astronomy has always placed them. The sages and the Pleiades, cosmologically bound but separated. Why they left, the text doesn't fully say. Ancient Egypt, the most documented ancient civilization we have, and buried inside its cosmology, a concept that took Egyptologists decades to take seriously. Shebtiw, the first time. The Egyptians believed that far before their recorded history, before the pharaohs, before the pyramids, before even their gods as they understood them, there was a primordial era, a time before time, in which divine beings came to earth and established the foundations of everything that followed. They called these beings the Shebtiw, the builder gods, 7 of them, and they predate everything else in the Egyptian cosmological record. The texts describe them arriving at the primordial mound, the first dry land. They established the sacred domains. They laid the foundation of every temple that followed, not as myth, as architectural instruction. The Egyptians built every sacred site according to what the Shebtiw established at Shebtiw, encoding that first moment into stone, alignment by alignment, for thousands of years. Their precise orientations point backward, not to 2500 BCE, to something older, to a time the Egyptians called Shebtiw, the first time, when beings of extraordinary knowledge were here. They weren't building monuments to their present. They were building a message to the future about something that happened before their civilization began. The question is, what were they trying to make sure we didn't forget? And then did. West Africa, Mali. A tribe called the Dogon, completely isolated from Mesopotamia, from India, from Egypt, and they remembered beings that should be impossible for them to know about. They called them the Nomo, amphibious beings, fish-like, who descended from the sky in a vessel accompanied by fire and thunder. They dived in a reservoir of water and lived there. And they taught the Dogon everything: astronomy, agriculture, spiritual law. That alone would be interesting. But here's what makes the Dogon case unlike anything else in this investigation. The Dogon knew that Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, was a binary system, that it had a companion star invisible to the naked eye that orbited the main star in an elliptical pattern once every 50 years. Western astronomy confirmed the existence of Sirius B in 1862 with a telescope. The Dogon had this knowledge for centuries before that, encoded into their mythology, passed down through oral tradition from the Nomo, who they say came from a world circling Sirius. The Nomo told the Dogon something else before they left. They said they would return, that when Sirius aligns correctly, purifying light would rain down and reorganize the world. Possibly the oldest living cultural tradition on Earth. The Wangina Wangur people paint beings called the Wangina, white-faced, enormous black eyes, no mouths, surrounded by what appears to be a halo. Their oral tradition, passed down for 60,000 years, says the Wangina were sky beings, spirits from the clouds. They descended from the Milky Way during the dream time. They created the earth and its inhabitants. They taught law, language, culture, and then they disappeared into the water holes, into the earth, into the water beneath the ground. The Apkallu descended to the subterranean waters of Enki. The Wandjina descended into the water holes. 60,000 years of separation. The same ending. South America. The Inca, a god called Viracocha, who rose from Lake Titicaca during a time of darkness to bring light. Who made mankind. Who then wandered the earth disguised as a beggar, teaching civilization, working miracles, weeping when people refused to listen, and then walked into the Pacific Ocean and disappeared. He was described as carrying a staff and a book, a teacher, walking. Across Mesoamerica, the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan Cuculcán, the same figure, bringer of knowledge, inventor of writing, departed and promised to return. I want to show you something. The Pleiades, a cluster of stars in the constellation Taurus, visible from virtually every inhabited place on Earth with the naked eye. Now I want to read you a list, not of myths, of civilizations. Mesopotamia. The Apkallu connected directly to the Pleiades in Babylonian astronomical tradition. India. The 7 sages ascended to Ursa Major, but the Pleiades were their wives. Egypt. The Pleiades tracked the Dendera zodiac. Rising marked sacred calendar dates. Greece. The 7 sisters, daughters of Atlas, placed in the heavens by Zeus. Aboriginal Australia. Also the 7 sisters. A myth strikingly similar to the Greek version, despite these cultures having no contact for at least 50,000 years. The Celts. The Pleiades rising marked Samhain, the boundary between worlds. Native America. The Cherokee, the Lakota, the Zuni, the seed stars, sacred signal for planting and harvest. Japan. Subaru. The word means coming together. 6 stars in their logo, but the tradition always remembers 7. The Dogon, whose teachers came from a star system near the Pleiades and who encoded astronomical knowledge about it that took telescopes to verify. Every single one of these civilizations, with no contact, no shared language, no trade route that could explain it, all independently arrived at the same cluster of stars and attached the same significance. 7 wise teachers, 7 stars. Now here's where it gets deeper than I expected when I started researching this episode. Researchers, using data from the Gaia Space Telescope, backtraced the position of the Pleiades through deep time, and they found something extraordinary. Today, 6 stars are reliably visible to the naked eye. 2 of them, Atlas and Pleione, are now so close together that most human eyes can no longer separate them. 100,000 years ago, they were clearly 2 distinct stars. Anyone looking at that ancient sky would have seen 7. The 7 sisters story, the myth that every culture on Earth shares, may be 100,000 years old. That story was passed from mouth to ear for 4,000 generations. In every tradition, Mesopotamian, Hindu, Egyptian, Dogon, Aboriginal, Australian, Incan, the 7 beings don't just arrive and teach. They leave a warning, The Apkallu buried their knowledge before the flood, not randomly, in a specific city, because they knew what was coming. The Saptarishi were tasked specifically with preserving sacred knowledge through the coming destruction, and they wrote it out on a boat guided by a fish. Egypt's Shebtiw is framed not as a beginning, but as a response, as if civilization was rebuilt after something catastrophic. The Dogon Nomo said they would return when the stars align and the world is reorganized. The Wandjina are still considered present, waiting in the waterways beneath the earth. They didn't just come to teach. They came to make sure something survived, which means they knew something was coming. Over 200 documented flood narratives exist worldwide. Science has found evidence of a catastrophic global event around 10,000 to 12,000 BCE, the Younger Dryas impact, a civilization-ending catastrophe that mainstream archaeology has spent 50 years trying to explain. If the 7 sages came before that event, and if they buried their knowledge specifically to survive it, then the question isn't whether or not the flood happened. The question is what they knew that we still don't. That's episode 3. If you made it here, thank you genuinely. It points toward a version of human history that's older, stranger, and more connected than anything we were ever taught. Subscribe to join the investigation into what the flood destroyed and what was buried to survive it. Episode 3 coming soon. The Sumerian texts are freely available through the electronic text of Corpus Sumerian Literature at Oxford University. The Mēseri Incantation is on archive.org, and the Shatapata Brahmana is there too. Go read them yourself. Don't take my word for it. This is Nikki with the Shadow Hour Report, signing off.